Hi there guys and gals, outdoorsies. It's Pete, MindWiseMan's channel, aka Maverick Outdoors, and at the moment, as you can see, one of the very few times you'll ever see it, I'm actually indoors. I'm in the hub hive of my daily activity, my work office. The content of this video actually features me being indoors, and that'll make more sense in a moment. So before you go to skip some of this video from now on or fast forward it, stick with it, because it will all make sense as we progress through the video. As a lot of you know, my outdoors interests and activities sometimes cross over into the realms of my mentoring and coaching work, and of course that sort of outdoor activity is not privy and appropriate to put on YouTube, because obviously it's private to client, etc. But as you know, sometimes my work will cross over onto that, and if I feel there is something, any content which is appropriate and of interest to my subscribers and people that follow what I do, then I will include it. And this is an instance where I actually am. The beginning of October, it's now the middle of November 2014, but the beginning of October this year, I was approached by a mainstream TV company to appear on one of their magazine programs in the morning. This will make more sense in a moment. So what I'm actually building up to is just sharing with you this experience that I had. I enjoyed it. It was quite an eye-opener to see how sometimes the media will appreciate maybe the prepper and survivalist mindset. As I say, stick with it, it'll make more sense as we progress through the vid. Suffice to say, the last thing I'll say is that this TV program put me up in a very nice hotel, which actually was the London residence to the grandfather of Queen Elizabeth II, the reigning Queen of England at the moment in the UK. So that was something I'm not normally used to, you know, being outdoors, roughing it. I mean, this was the total opposite. So anyway, I hope it's of interest, stick with it, and it will all make sense. So I'll take you back in time, and, well, I'll take you back in time. Okay, I'm in the wardrobe of the late Earl of Strathmore, who is the late Queen Mother's father, in his Grange house in Knightsbridge, near the centre of London. And I'm going to venture out of this wardrobe now and close the door behind me. And I'm in this massive, great big bedroom. Suffice to say, on my own. As I just look out the window into Knightsbridge, of one of the main capitals in the world. But anyway, this is now converted into a hotel room. That's the bed I'm going to sleep in for about 2 hours. Then I'll sleep in that one for about an hour and a half. Then I think I might sort of have a bit of a kip in that one. But then end up in this one. Got all my basic ETCs, even when I come here somewhere like this place, still got all my important stuff. Even indoors, I'm prepped outdoors for the max. This is all tongue-in-cheek, you know, not serious. That is, though. All ready for an overnighter in this hotel room on Sunday the 19th of October 2014, and it's actually gone into the 20th. I think we're about nearly 1 o'clock in the morning, so need a good night's kip, freshen up in the morning for the interview for ITV, one of the main channels on British TV, for ITV's This Morning programme, which is on from 10:30 AM to 12:30, so it's a 2-hour morning programme, and they're going to feature a medical specialist who deals with tropical diseases amongst other things. And it's just basically about Ebola, you know, the Ebola scare, that's, well, the deaths and the crisis it's caused in Western Africa. And they're going to discuss, you know, the concerns about it, and he's going to be given some specialist information, and I'm going to be there sort of representing the aspect of, you know, preparing for the worst, but always hoping for the best, and actually just putting my logical approach to it without it being scaremongering, and actually saying that, you know, the biggest problems are when people have fear and disinformation, or they feel totally sort of helpless to think of how they can control any crisis, whatever it is, whether it's medical, whether it's a health thing, or whether it's something political worldwide. Preppers are always trying to be one step ahead without being paranoid or without being scaremongering, and all the time we don't want problems to happen. I want to be in the outdoors, I want to enjoy myself, but if the worst is to happen, you make contingencies. A sort of principle that people think that preppers are actually really want a problem to happen so they can prove to everyone and say, hey, you should have prepped. Not my bag. So I'm just going to put over the aspect of my angle on it and sort of representing a prepper's type approach to not just Ebola, but any sort of health scare or anything that can help you keep safe and also keep your health and well-being. That's what it's all about. And the odds are we're sort of most probably 99.9% that nothing's going to happen, and it will stay confined to, sadly, to Africa, and will eventually diminish with the help of other global health organisations helping out. So at the end of the day, it doesn't matter whether it's Ebola, whether it's a political crisis, whether it's petrol strikes, docks closing down, dock strikes, just a simple thing like being without petrol or petrol shortages over 72 hours, over 3 days, it could virtually bring the country to a halt. Because everything is virtually based around fuel, petrol, people can't get to work unless there's petrol. Public transport, the emergency services, obviously that's where we would prioritise if there was a petrol shortage, but of course within 24, 48 hours it will be limited, and of course supermarkets and food shops and outlets within 48 hours will be in chaos, and people that haven't stocked up with food or prepared for that sort of thing are not going to be able to get any food. But back to the Ebola, odds on everything's going to be okay. And even if there are a few people that get infected, because what's causing the problem and the dilemma is that there's sort of contrasting information. One minute the health authorities are saying one thing, and then the media might distort it a little bit because they're not sure. So it just creates a bit of a crisis where you have to go, right, okay, if you don't know, obviously I don't know, but I want to make sure that I find out as much as possible so that my health and well-being is maintained. And for me personally, my well-being is knowing that I can be one step ahead for any crisis. There might be times when it might actually catch me out, but at least I know I've tried the best I can, and then just carrying on with life. That's what it's all about. We're living here to enjoy our life, to experience different things, but at the same point, if you sort of got a prepper mindset, you apply certain aspects of prepper lifestyle to your lifestyle. It just makes you feel more secure. It makes you feel more in control. But of course, at the end of the day, if a crisis doesn't actually hit SHTF scenario, brilliant, because I don't want that. I don't want to have to experience any SHTF. But if push comes to shove and the crux happened, then I know I'm going to be able to deal with it as best as possible. So I just have to see how this interview goes. But from the feedback I've had from how they want to process it and go about it tomorrow, I think they're going to take quite a fair angle, and I'm also going to justify, and the survivalist mindset as to being justified as to our approach to that sort of thing. I'm wanting to find out and making sure that we're sort of safe and protected without it going into paranoia, without it going into panic. But of course, people that don't understand prepping principles think all we do is we just want to preach being paranoid and panic, and you should be doing this, you should be doing that. And all I do basically is share my ideas. If people take them, they can take them. If they want to leave them, they can leave them. So I'm going to get some rest now, recharge my batteries, so that I'm prepared for tomorrow. For this little interview and TV article they're going to be doing, with some of my own footage and video, very, very briefly explaining some of the basic domestics behind sort of prepping, without going into it too elaborately, so that you don't leave yourself overexposed. National television not being overexposed, yeah, physically, you can see who I am, but there are more things that I do not make public than what there are that I share with people. Not to make people feel ostracised, but that's another part of prepping as well. You don't sort of advertise where everything is, because there's more aspects to prepping for me personally that I will share to a point. So on that note, I'm going to get ready to settle for the night. Nice bathroom. Ooh. Bit different from being in the woods and under a tarp. This is 100 and whatever %, the total opposite to that sort of process. So, ends of both scale, bit of yin and yang. And on that note, cheers.
Welcome back. Well, despite no confirmed infections in the UK, sales of gas masks, freeze-dried food and protective suits have reportedly rocketed as a growing number of preppers do all they can to safeguard themselves against a possible UK epidemic of Ebola.
And in just a minute we'll be speaking to one such prepper, survivalist Peter Stanford, and Dr. Chris Van Tulleken, who believes that the hype is unnecessary. First though, here's the story so far.
Since March of this year, the Ebola death toll has risen from 50 to 4,500, making it the worst epidemic of its kind since its discovery in 1976. The outbreak started in Guinea, West Africa, and has since spread to neighbouring countries Sierra Leone, Nigeria and Liberia. On August the 8th, the World Health Organization declared Ebola an international public health emergency. Soon after, many direct flights from the UK to Sierra Leone were suspended after one woman died on board a flight with suspected Ebola symptoms. This weekend, a man rumoured to be infected with the disease was admitted to a London hospital, fuelling fears of a UK outbreak. And with reports that sales of gas masks and protective suits are on the rise, is the nation succumbing to an unwarranted Ebola hysteria? Well, here alongside survivalist Peter Stanford is infectious diseases expert Dr. Chris Van Tulleken. Welcome both. The Prime Minister says this is the biggest health threat to our world in a generation.
Well, I think that's a really interesting quote, and I'm not sure why he said it. I think this is a terrible humanitarian crisis in West Africa, and I don't think you'll find any infection doctor in the UK who will say that we are likely in the next few years to see more than a tiny handful of imported cases. Our protocols are good. It's conceivable that, as we've seen in Spain and the United States, we might get one or two secondary transmissions. But this is not an easy virus to catch, and it's an easy virus to contain. And our protocols, we've been doing these protocols for years and years. I've been at the Hospital for Tropical Diseases now for more than 5 years, and we've always had a West African fever service where we've isolated people, taken blood, sent them to Porton and made sure they don't have a hemorrhagic fever.
Okay. And so you say it's a difficult one to catch?
It is a relatively difficult one to catch, and I think we see, bearing witness to that, the fact of the nurses taking international or national plane flights and so far not infecting anyone. And it seems to me from the reports I've read in the press that the breach of protocols in Dallas was egregious. So there were enormous quantities of highly infectious fluids from very sick people and very inadequate personal protection. Okay. This is, if you're well protected, I strongly believe that if you're well protected, you really, really should never ever be seeing this happen.
But it can take up to 21 days to incubate, can't it? So we don't know the effects of what those mistakes.
We don't know that yet, but what we do know is that other plane flights with people with Ebola on them have not seen, that are now much more than 28 days old, have not seen transmission. So this, I really think that there are lots of reasons where we could go into the biology of why Ebola is very unlikely to spread in the UK. But I'm not paid by the government. I'm not here as a spokesperson for my hospital. I'm not here speaking to the Medical Research Council. I'm saying, as an independent expert, I don't think you will find anyone who is concerned about this virus spreading in the UK.
Okay, so in layman's terms, I'm on a plane and the person next to me has Ebola. I am not going to catch it.
You are, insofar as we can be certain about anything in biology, you are relatively unlikely, provided you're not touching them, and they're not. If they are in multi-organ failure and vomiting onto you, right, then yes, you might well. But at
I'd
this
be slightly
point in the
disappointed
epidemic,
if they were on the plane.
Exactly.
In that
at this point in the
state.
epidemic, we are so aware that people who are looking unwell are not getting on planes, and we are taking measures as a global community far too late to contain this.
Right.
I mean, the problem is the hypocrisy of the response. So if we had so when the second nurse got infected, the Dow Jones plummeted, and billions and billions wiped off the stock market. If we had spent a tiny fraction of that on containment in January, when organisations like Doctors of the World, Médecins Sans Frontières were saying we need to contain this, then we wouldn't have seen any cases in the States.
Okay.
So why are you going to all this trouble?
It's not trouble. It's assessing a health scare, which could be a crisis, and just being prepared for it, hoping for the best but expecting the worst. Obviously, I'm not here to scaremonger or to sort of say that this could get, and Chris has actually stated some things that I totally agree with. It was dealt with far too late in Africa. The medical services out there aren't as good a standard in Western countries, in America and of course the UK, but it's still a concern. because there are certain things that are actually given, information that are given to the public, where one thing contradicts the other. So you get all these people with their protective equipment, and then there's a photograph of someone that's got a shirt and a pair of trousers in the same group of people, or someone's going on a plane. So it does give you cause for concern as to if there are certain uncertainties that you have to sort of try and consider.
Can you answer that question? I mean, how much in danger was that man with a clipboard at the airport? Why were the other people?
It's hard to know exactly what he was saying. I would say he was in relatively little danger if he didn't touch the patient. I mean, the patient was not. It was very hard. It's very hard to transmit body fluids, you know, without projecting them across more than a couple of meters. So I would say it was a stupid thing to do. It frightened a lot of people, but I think the actual risk was quite low.
What's your plan?
Yeah.
My plan is to live at home and live a peaceful life. No, it's just, if something were to happen of the extreme, then I'd be able to actually adjust to that. It's a little bit like saying, you know, do I have an insurance policy on my house and I pay for that and hope it burns down so then I can claim on it. It's having an insurance policy as such, because the subject of prepping is just an extension of things that I do in my leisure time, survival skills, going outdoors, living outdoors.
Okay.
But I would actually, as a last resort, I would go out of doors as a last resort if I had to get out of Dodge for any particular reason. Not Ebola, but anything. So I would rather, what the term is, bug in, and I'd rather be secure indoors if there was an outbreak or if there was any form of disease or health concern.
I mean, this is irrelevant, but in Los Angeles, I have a lot of friends who've got bags and everything packed, prepared for earthquakes. I suppose
that's a very real threat.
That is a real threat, I suppose.
Peter and I were talking beforehand. I think Peter's been doing this preparedness for many years, and there are lots of scenarios where I think it's really smart. My only concern, and I'm sure this doesn't apply to Peter, is that prepping can be quite an inward-looking thing. And every time you buy your bags of rice or beans, I would suggest you match that amount of money with a donation to a charity or an NGO or the Disasters Emergency Committee that are containing things at source, because we don't want to be dealing with this in the UK. And Ebola is a virus that I'm absolutely certain we will not be. But this epidemic has exposed weaknesses in our global epidemic response. And we can imagine viruses, like influenza being probably the best example, SARS, that could be much more of a problem. They're harder to contain, they're easier to catch, they're easier to transmit.
Do friends and family get to come with you when you disappear off into the woods?
They're maybe not as interested in prepping as much as what I am, or going into the outdoors and just making sure you've got enough food in the house in case they run out of food in your shops or whatever. But they're being sort of drawn to it. They are sort of interested in it, and obviously you can't force anyone to do anything they don't want to do, but I would encourage them to at least have some sort of prep awareness about anything.
Well, Julie said it's the media again trying to scare us. It was the same with swine flu and bird flu. Every single time one of these things happens, and you know, so obviously don't put down the dangerous nature of it. You know, everybody panics. The media jump on it. Kirsty says we shouldn't all start to mass panic. The virus is in West Africa, where it should be contained until it is beaten. You're preparing yourself. Some would say perhaps you were just paranoid.
No, exactly. But I'm not, far from it. Just like you can say, oh, you're paranoid, you have a car accident, you claim on the insurance, but you never go out in the car again. No, you adjust to it and you take out another insurance and you drive safely because someone else might cause the problem. Considering, you know, with all due respect to the NHS, which is understaffed and sometimes slave-driven, people working over hours, so of course it puts stresses and strains on it. I could go into a hospital and actually leave because of the hygiene conditions with something that I never went in with, and that isn't anything against the NHS. That just happens to be fact, and if my immunity's low or I'm at an older age group, and that's not being ageist, but if I was an older, I might be more susceptible to that. So that's what's actually happening in British hospitals.
Is it the numbers? Is it that 4,500 and the increase that's worrying you?
Yes, within a small environment.
Yeah,
I know that the conditions there are totally different from...
I asked for a bit of research this morning for some figures. The World Health Organization estimates that the annual flu epidemic kills between 250,000 and 500,000 people worldwide. Why hasn't that driven you into the forest?
It's because, actually that's a very good point.
You've made him worry more
now. You've made me really paranoid and panic now.
It
really is, it boils down to, I'm aware of that, just the same as HIV and AIDS. It's still an epidemic worldwide, which apparently started in Central Africa, but it's still an epidemic worldwide after 30-odd years. And the thing is, it's transferred by two main things, either contaminated blood supply or else unprotected sex. So, but you've still got people that are prepared to engage in the act unprotected and maybe catch
a load of other STDs besides HIV and AIDS.
As far as the level head, the final word, we get bombarded with this on the news. It's in the papers. A lot of people worried about it. My 13-year-old nephew was talking about it the other day, and you know, if he's talking about it, then it's getting everyone's attention.
If you're worried, do everything you can to bring compassionate humanitarian aid to West Africa. There is, in terms of global population, there have been 2 deaths in the United States, 2 deaths, and the country's on red alert, okay? West Africa, this is going to cause massive economic damage. It's still not going to kill a lot of people in West Africa, I don't think, compared to other epidemics, compared to malaria. But if you really focus it in a compassionate way on sending money there. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you both. Right, so let's change gear now. We'll talk about recipes. It's a lady that actually makes recipes for less than £1 a head and says blogging changed her life.
We're going to be in the kitchen with Chef Jack Monroe after this short break.